What is your best ghost, paranormal experience story? This is my brother's story, but it's a good one. He was working as a night porter at an old hotel from the 18th century in the northern English countryside. One night, a woman came down to reception as white as a sheet with her suitcase, saying she could not sleep and did not want to stay there. My brother inquired as to why. She said she could hear children laughing all night and a child had entered her room with a candle and was standing at the foot of the bed and wouldn't leave. My brother mentioned it to his manager the following morning and he was told that it is a regular occurrence. Before the hotel was a hotel, it used to be used as a school and kindergarten over 100 years ago. Camping at a friend's family property with a group of friends. They had a huge dingy shop full of old tools and old furniture that was super creepy. Dirt floor, clown paintings in the loft, not even kidding. We stayed up late drinking by the fire and I was the last one awake. Went to go pee on the side of the shop and stood about 5 feet away looking inside through the window. There was a fluorescent light on and I noticed what looked like a piece of paper or dollar kind of floating around. I thought it was a moth at first, but it was moving in a very flowing figure 8 pattern that was very rhythmic. It reminded me of dangling a carrot. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds, which felt like forever. Then it quickly floated back to the corner of the shop where it was dark. There was also a wood chair near the corner that added to the creepiness. Could have been a moth though. I sat back down by the fire to finish my beer and have a smoke. No one else was awake, so I played Robot Unicorn Attack 2 on my phone for a while. I noticed my friend Mark pop out of his tent to pee, then go back in to go to sleep. I decided sleep sounded good, so I went to my tent and fell asleep. The next morning, we were having breakfast and Mark said, "I saw you guys sitting by the fire super late. How late did you stay up?" I told him I was probably 2 or 3 a.m. Then he said, "Who was up with you?" I told him I was the last man standing. He said, "I got up to pee and saw you on your phone and 2 people over your shoulder watching you play." He said one person looked bigger, so he thought it was one of our friends, who was a bigger dude. He said the other person was taller and skinny, but none of us are noticeably tall or skinny. Freaked me out. We still camp at that property once a year, but I don't go in the shop, and I go to sleep whenever my wife decides she's tired. My brother's bedroom was next door to mine growing up. One afternoon, he asked me what I was doing the previous night that made me laugh so much. Confused, I pressed him for details. "About 3 a.m. last night, your laughter woke me up. It sounded like you were pacing your room, too. Pacing and laughing." At this point I told him that I wasn't home last night. I'd been at a friend's house. He went pale. To this day he swears blind that it was my laugh. I have a very distinct laugh, apparently. Schizophrenic family member went on a bit of an alcoholic bender, pre-diagnosis, and ended up in the hospital. Her husband, who was a bit older, passed away suddenly while she was in a coma. When she awoke, first thing she said to my mom was, "I know, husband's name is gone." He came to tell me, very freaky. The house I grew up in was haunted. The way it was laid out, I could see from my bedroom down the hall and into the living room. My parents' bedroom door was on the other side of the living room directly across from my door. Late at night I would hear someone pacing circles in the living room, but I was the only one awake in the house and we didn't have pets. I never said anything because I didn't want the family to think I was nuts. Eventually I moved out and went to college. After I graduated I was in a rough spot financially. My parents had bought a new house, the old one was still empty. They were considering getting renters, and offered it to me to stay in for a while. I said no, I didn't want to move in. Mom asked why. I finally gave in and told her I thought there was a ghost. My mom froze and turned to look at me and was like, "You hear her too?" Turns out she had also heard it for years and didn't say anything for the same reason. Not a ghost story or paranormal, but a true experience. Many years ago I was working in a shop and an old lady had purchased several bags of shopping. It was a little icy outside and I knew the lady lived less than 100 yards away from the shop, so I offered to take her shopping home for her. She was shocked that I would offer and ever so grateful. On the way to her house she kept saying thank you to me. I told her it was no problem and I was happy to help. She said she wished more people like me were helpful, etc., etc. As we reached her door, she opened it and stepped away so I could enter. I told her that I was okay holding the bags and she should go in the house and get out the cold. She thanked me again and stepped in the doorway and took a few steps down the hall. I walked in behind her and put the shopping bags on the floor. I asked her if she wanted me to help her put things away and she insisted I had done enough and thanked me again and again. I stepped outside and turned round to say bye to her. As she was closing the door she said, "Thank you, young man. I will watch over your soul from heaven." A few days later she was found dead in her home, in the hallway, next to a few bags of slowly rotting shopping. Not sure if it was a ghost or something like that, but back in 2015 when I was younger, I was at my cousin's place. We were hanging out in her grandpa's backyard. As we are messing around, we hear screaming and banging coming from the living room window of the house. We look up and see a woman crying hysterically and hitting the windows. We shout and ask her if she's okay, but she tells us to leave her alone and shuts the window completely. Her grandpa and grandma weren't at home at the time that happened. The strangest thing was, when we went into the house the woman was gone, and we just brushed it off. I've told this story on another subreddit, but I'll tell it again. I was house or pet sitting for my biological mom and stepdad back in June, and was on a video call with my best friend. I was the only living person in that house, but my best friend said that there was a woman standing behind me in the kitchen, while I was sitting on the couch with my laptop on my lap. Me and my family went on a holiday to Indonesia in 2019 and I shared a hotel room with my sister. The first morning she mentioned that in the night she'd seen someone walk across our room and stare out the window. She'd even heard the floorboards creak as they moved. She gets sleep paralysis pretty regularly, so we shrugged it off. 2 days later I woke up in the middle of the night to see someone sat at the end of my bed, their hands cupping their face as they cried. I thought it was my sister and sat up. "You okay?" I asked and froze as I realized I could see my sister tucked up in her bed out the corner of my eye. The figure, which was like a living silhouette, was clearly female with long hair tied back in a ponytail. I just kinda slowly lay back down, took out my phone and started watching YouTube videos. I know that sounds stupid, but I figured there wasn't much else I could do. Every now and then I'd look up and see the figure still there and then go back to watching my videos. This lasted about half an hour until I looked up and the woman was just gone. My uncle said he saw Grandpa and Grandma waving him in. A few days later he died. My aunt had a similar experience. Grandpa and Grandma was standing next to her. A few days later, she died. My friend's aunt had a similar experience. She was heard talking to someone for a long time. She said she was talking to Tom. Tom had died years ago. That same week, she died. It seems that dead relatives might visit people to help them with the transition to the other side. We were on vacation in Egypt and the first night in the hotel I got to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up and opened my eyes and right before me was a white face of an old man staring at me and then disappeared. Had to sleep in another room for 3 nights with lights on after that. I completely was in terror because it was so vivid.